position of the impression. Firmly press the impression into the dental putty so that it is securely seated. Look at the articulator from both the front and side views. Make sure that the occlusal plane of the teeth is parallel to the trays of the articulator. Also, make sure you used an adequate amount of putty so that the occlusion of the bite will occur approximately in the middle of the two articulator trays. Use the alignment pin to locate the correct pin positions and to puncture the corresponding membranes. This method of pin alignment is referred to as Method 1. A detailed description of this method and other pin alignment methods is described in the chapter titled Closed Bite Auto Articulation, under the Easy and Fast Pin Alignment section. Once the correct pinhole has been located, puncture the membrane by pushing the alignment pin with the back of an impression handle. Continue locating the correct pinholes and puncturing the corresponding membranes. Use a felt pen or Sharpie to mark each pinhole that will be used. Place a dowel pin in each of the marked pinholes. Push the pins lightly into the pinholes so that the dowel pin is snugly seated. Do not use excessive force to drive the pins deep into the pinholes. Close the articulator and perform one last check to make sure you have pinned all the prepped and adjacent dies. Use the vibrator to fill the impression with stone so that the teeth are covered and the impression is approximately 50% full. Using a small spatula can be very helpful in preventing air bubbles when filling the impression. Use a larger spatula to pour stone on the working tray. Before vibrating, dab stone over the pinholes of the articulator. Covering the pinholes first and then vibrating ensures that the stone will not flow into the unused pinholes containing the air stop membrane. Once the holes are covered, vibrate lightly and gently rock the tray to evenly spread the stone. Use the large spatula to stack the impression with dental stone. Make sure that you use an adequate amount of stone so that when the articulator is closed, the opposing tray and working tray can sit parallel to one another. Close the working tray over the impression and push the working tray down slightly so that it is nearly parallel to the opposing tray. Be sure not to push the working tray down too far. It is best to keep the trays parallel or slightly open. After a minute or so, when the stone has begun to set but is still soft enough to wipe away, use a small spatula to clean the model. When cleaning, it is best to hold the articulator by the hinge or by one tray only. You do not want to squeeze the two trays together and inadvertently push some of the wet stone out of the model. Don't forget to clean the lingual side of the model. With the small spatula, it is very easy to wipe the stone away while the model is still wet. This will certainly save you time when it comes to grinding the model. Along with wiping away the excess stone, you may want to smooth and fill the distal edges of the model for a more aesthetic appeal. Allow the model to set with the working side on top. Placing the model with the working side on bottom may cause the weight of the impression and putty to push down on the stone while it is still wet. After approximately 40 minutes, or as otherwise recommended by the die stone manufacturer, open the articulator and remove the impression. Rock the impression back and forth while pulling it away from the cast. Also, remove the dental putty from the opposing tray. To remove the model, grip it as shown. Be sure to grip the model and not the tray. Gripping the model only will allow for easier separation. Use a small mallet to tap on the distal end stop rod receivers. Give a few solid taps on each stop rod receiver. The model can then easily be wiggled out from the tray. This first method of articulating is the quickest and requires no extra materials aside from stone. Pour the opposing tray, making sure that you completely fill the tray with stone. Apply a small amount of water to the top of the opposing model. Slightly dampening the model will help it securely adhere to the lab stone that is poured in the opposing tray. Hand articulate the bite and then close the opposing tray over the model. Check the bite to make sure it looks correct and then wipe the excess stone from the opposing tray and model. Check the bite one more time to make sure it has not been disturbed. This second method of articulating and mounting the opposing side keeps the bite securely together and works very well for cases that have a limited number of occlusal contact points. Hand articulate the model and use the Artimax hot glue gun to secure the bite. 2 or 3 spots of glue should be sufficient. Make sure that the glue extends to both the working and opposing models. Wet the top of the opposing cast with water. This will help the model securely adhere to the lab stone that will be poured in the opposing tray. Pour the opposing tray, making sure that you completely fill the tray with stone. You may also want to stack a layer of wet stone on the top of the opposing model. This will ensure there is enough stone in the model so that the opposing and working trays will be parallel. Close the opposing tray of the articulator over the model and wipe away the excess stone from the opposing model. Once the opposing side has had adequate setting time, remove the glue from the model. The hot glue from the Artimax glue gun securely holds the bite of the model, and when finished, it is removed easily by lightly wetting the glued area and peeling the glue off. Now check the bite to make sure it was articulated correctly and needs no further adjustment. Creating a working model on the tray base. This case that we received from the doctor consists of a single side working impression and a single side opposing impression. A triple tray impression can also be used on the tray base. As with pouring the working side on the built-in hinge articulator, pouring the working side on the tray base requires the row of prep teeth to be in line with the row of pinholes. Start by trimming the impression so that it fits well between the dental putty and the working tray. The alignment fixture is a simple device that consists of an opposing tray, a hinge, and a tray base adapter. The tray base adapter slides into the back of the tray base from the bottom and snaps into place. The tray base now has a temporarily fixed plate on which to place the putty and working side impression. Firmly attach the Artimax dental putty to the opposing tray of the articulator. Lightly place the impression onto the dental putty so that the row of teeth is in approximate alignment with the row of pinholes. Fine-tune the sitting position of the articulator by looking down through the working tray. It is helpful to open and close the articulator while slightly adjusting the sitting position of the impression. Adjust the impression until you are satisfied that the row of teeth is in line with the row of pinholes. Once the correct position has been found, press the impression securely into the putty. Check the position again to make sure the impression was not pushed out of place. Look at the articulator from both the front and side views. Make sure that the occlusal plane of the teeth is parallel to the trays of the articulator. Use the alignment pin to locate the correct pin positions and to puncture the corresponding membranes. This method of pin alignment is referred to as method 1. For this method, simply place the alignment pin into a pinhole that appears to be in alignment with one of the prep teeth. Before pushing the pin through any of the membranes, close the articulator and verify that the top of the alignment pin extends up into the middle of the prepped area. Continue locating the correct pinholes and puncturing the corresponding membranes. A detailed description of this method and other pin alignment methods is described in the chapter titled Closed Bight Auto Articulation under the Easy and Fast Pin Alignment section. Use a felt pen or Sharpie to mark each pinhole that will be used. The open pinholes may be easier to locate and mark if you look for the open pinholes against a dark background. Place a dowel pin in each of the marked pinholes. Push the pins lightly into the pinholes so that the dowel pin is snugly seated. Do not use excessive force to drive the pins deep into the pinholes. Close the articulator and perform one last check to make sure you have pinned all the prepped and adjacent dies. Use the vibrator to fill the impression with stone so that the teeth are covered and the impression is approximately 50% full. Using a small spatula can be very helpful in preventing air bubbles when filling the impression. Use a large spatula to pour stone on the working tray. Before vibrating, dab stone over the pinholes of the articulator. Covering the pinholes first and then vibrating ensures that the stone will not flow into the unused pinholes containing the air stop membrane. Once the pinholes are covered, vibrate lightly and gently rock the tray to evenly spread the stone. Use the large spatula to stack the impression with dental stone. Make sure that you use an adequate amount of stone so that when the articulator is closed, the opposing tray and working tray can sit parallel to one another. Close the working tray over the impression and push the working tray down slightly so that it is nearly parallel to the opposing tray. Be sure not to push the working tray down too far. It is best to keep the trays parallel or slightly open. After a minute or so, when the stone has begun to set but is still soft enough to wipe away, use a small spatula to clean the model. When cleaning, it is best to hold the articulator by the hinge or by one tray only. You do not want to squeeze the two trays together and inadvertently push some of the wet stone out of the model. Don't forget to clean the lingual side of the model also. With the small spatula, it is very easy to wipe the stone away while the model is wet. It will undoubtedly save you time when it comes to grinding the model. It is also a good idea to remove the excess stone from the distal ends of the model. Allow the model to set with the working side on top. Placing the model with the working side on bottom may cause the weight of the impression and putty to push down on the stone while it is still wet. After the model has had sufficient drying time, detach the putty from the impression by opening the articulator. You are now done using the alignment fixture. Grip the hinge of the fixture near the tray base and push the adapter down and out of the base. The model is now ready to be removed, sectioned, and trimmed. Because we spent a few moments removing the excess stone from the model while it was still wet, the grinding will be minimal. When removing the model, be sure to grip the model and not the tray base. This will allow the model to be removed easily. Use the mallet to tap each of the two distal end stop rod receivers. A few solid taps on each receiver will be enough to break the initial seal between the model and the tray base. The model can then easily be wiggled out from the tray base. Mounting the tray base on a semi-adjustable or metal articulator. The tray base has 3 slots in the bottom that receive the magnet adapter plate. The magnet adapter plate has 3 corresponding notches that fit into the tray base. The magnet fits precisely into the magnet adapter plate and should be inserted from the top as shown. Simply push the magnet down into place. Place a drop of glue in each of the 3 slots located on the tray base. Line up the 3 notches on the adapter plate with the 3 slots on the tray base. Make sure that the top, or the side in which the magnet was inserted, is facing up toward the model. Push the adapter plate firmly into place and allow the glue to dry. Place the metal piece into the metal housing plate from the bottom. Push the metal piece in completely so that it rests on the plastic lip and is flush with the bottom of the plate. The metal housing plate is now easily connectable to the tray base. With the combination of magnetic force and interlocking parts, the two pieces connect securely and can easily be engaged and disengaged. The tray base can be magnetically connected to any type of semi-adjustable or metal articulator. The technician can easily lift the base model off of the semi-adjustable articulator, allowing open and convenient access. Bite adjustment. The Artimax heat gun is the recommended tool for adjusting the bite of the articulator. Check the bite on each of your articulated cases. As needed, heat the articulator and adjust the bite. Hold the heat gun as close to the corner areas of the hinge as possible without touching the heat gun to the articulator. The corner area of the hinge refers to the area at which the tray connects to the two legs of the hinge, as signified by the yellow circle. Heat the corner areas of the hinge for about 40 seconds so that they are thoroughly heated. While heating, occasionally switch back and forth to each of the two corner areas, spending equal time on each side. Make sure that both corner areas get thoroughly heated. If the hinge has not been heated well enough, the plastic will have some resistance and may want to push back out of occlusion while cooling. Allowing the corner areas to be heated thoroughly will ensure that there will be no memory left in the plastic, thereby allowing accurate articulation. While hot, flex the corner areas to ensure they are soft and movable. Articulate the model to the correct bite and then hold the bite for 20 to 30 seconds while it cools. It is best to allow the hinge to cool naturally. Some labs do, however, use a few passing sprays of compressed air to help speed up the cooling. This should have no negative effect on the bite. If at any time you experience a slight bounce in the occlusion that may be caused by quick cooling, re-articulate the bite and allow it to cool naturally. Refractory die method. Method 1. Triple tray impression. Pour the opposing and working sides of your model, as previously instructed in the section titled Closed Bite Auto Articulation. When first opening the articulator, pry open the working side and leave the opposing side firmly attached to the impression. Hold the working cast with one hand and using a small mallet, tap the distal end stop rod receivers. This will break the initial seal between the tray and the cast. You can now gently wiggle the cast up off the tray. Now place the Artimax zirconia refractory pins into each of the marked pinholes. These pinholes were marked and the membranes were punctured previously when the metal dowel pins were inserted while preparing to pour the working model, as can be seen in the section titled Closed Bite Auto Articulation. Check the working tray to ensure the zirconia pins have been placed in the correct pinholes as signified by the pinhole markings. Using vibration, fill the impression with investment material so that the teeth are covered and the impression is approximately 50% full. Using a small spatula can make pouring easier and help reduce the chance of creating air bubbles. Without vibration, use a larger spatula to cover the pinholes on the working tray. Once the pinholes are covered, vibrate briefly to spread the investment material. Stack the impression with investment material and close the working tray over top of the impression. Allow the model to sit with the working side on top for about 1 minute or until the excess investment material can be effectively wiped away. After the model has had sufficient setting time, remove the impression by gently rocking the trays as you slowly pull the articulator open. Gently rock the impression to remove it from the model. As done with the working model, hold the cast with one hand and use a small mallet to tap the distal end stop rod receivers. The refractory model can then easily be removed from the working tray. The two models are now completely interchangeable and can be inserted and removed from the working tray without the use of a mallet or any other tool. The two casts are exact duplicates and share the same stable and precise fit on the working tray. Method 2. All types of impressions. This refractory method is the most versatile and will work for any type of impression. Using a dispensing gun, cover the prep teeth with a light or medium body impression material. Take your time to make sure you fully cover each tooth in the prepped area. You should also cover the teeth adjacent to the prep area. These teeth will act as anchor points for the impression during duplication. On the facial side, the impression material should extend all the way down to the articulator tray, completely covering the prepped area, so the duplication material will not leak out while pouring. Leave a small hole on the lingual side of the model so that the investment material can be fed into the impression. If the hole is too small or becomes closed, use a small knife to cut a hole in the impression material. Allow the impression material sufficient setting time and then remove it from the model. Remove each of the dies that you will be duplicating. Insert zirconia pins into each of the marked pinholes. These are the same pinholes that are used for the prep dies of the working model. Apply die separator to the sides of the cast that will come into contact with the investment material when it's poured. Next, place the impression back on the working model. With the prep teeth pulled out of the articulator, the adjacent teeth act as anchor points to keep the impression in the correct position. Disconnect the opposing and working tray to facilitate easy pouring of the investment material. Place the facial end of the articulator on the vibrator and using a small spatula, feed the investment material through the small hole and into the impression. Place the investment material onto the plastic articulator, allowing it to flow down into the impression with the use of vibration. Completely fill the impression with investment material. Gently rock the articulator tray to ensure that the impression is completely full. Once the investment material has had sufficient setting time, remove the impression. First, wiggle out the section casts of the working model. You should be able to wiggle them out without the use of a mallet or other tools since the initial seal was previously broken. The refractory model can also be removed simply by wiggling out the model. The working dies and refractory dies are now totally interchangeable on the Artimax tray.